Lifebuoy Health Soap presents Big Town.
Extra, hear all about the
soul of Detroit.
Tonight's Big Town story brought to you by Lifebuoy Health Soap, used in the homes of 40 million Americans. Extra.
Lifebuoy Health Soap presents Big Town, the headline stories of a great city dramatically reported by
ML Elric.
You acid interrogative charges out of my suit. It's gone.
What are you doing? Come on.
That is not paid for by them. That is paid for by the people of Detroit.
You might be qualified, ML.
I'm not qualified for this job.
Let me tell you something. You want to go right now? Okay? You want to go right now?
Cyrus, take us out. I say that because Ben Blackwell is with us, the impresario from Man Records. Half of the drumming section of the Dirt Bombs, which if that sounds weird, we'll explain that to you in a minute. Sean is not here. Marc is under the weather, and we just did a great episode, but we forgot to record it. So now we're going to give you some pablum. So I apologize, but all the good shit would have been brought to you by Luke Nowacki of Pinnacle Wealth Strategies and the Caju Cafe, where we were last week. If you came out to see us, thank you very much. It was good to see you, and we hope to see you there August 1st for Soul Night, where we'll have Shasta Fox and the King's English playing live, and we'll do some exclusive opportunities to hang out with us for those of you who are members of our Soulmates, the Patreon supporters group, which is, of course, you are our most important sponsors. But yeah, it was a great episode, Ben. Thanks for coming on. We'll have to have you on again sometime.
It's just going to be me laughing this whole time.
That's
just miss your wit and your charm.
Me too.
Just like every other living being, you miss those, or you're looking for them and find them wanting. But so Ben's a great guy. I love Ben. He the only time you'll ever get in a disagreement with him is if you let him know that you were shopping in Midtown when you were really in the Cass corridor. That's going to be a problem. And if you happen to be conveyed there on a pedal bub, that could be a problem. So this is a really bad time to mention that we may be doing a show on the pedal pub later this summer with Erica Erickson. I don't know if Ben's going to give us dispensation because we have a celebrity among us then, but otherwise Ben's really easy to get along with, even if he does tend to bring up some triggering and hurtful recent events that involve people who gave up their career to try and save.
You need to get over it.
Do we not want to talk about this, or can we? Should we? Is that a bonus episode?
It's more of a bone us episode, and I'm the one getting the bone. But we actually should throw this open to the audience. Who's the craziest person to ever run for Detroit City Council, present company excluded, or mayor? And Ben was trying to think of some like really outrageous characters. And while we all know some people who were nutty, there aren't really any like celebrity goofball candidates that we were able to come up with.
Yeah, I bemoaned the fact that even Googling such a question provided almost zero answers. I didn't have the prep time to dig into newspaper archives and just look at, the ballot results on days after elections. But I assume that, a lot of times it's a sign of a crazy person that they run for public office with no chance or no financial backing to accomplish said election
tasks.
win.
So it said uphill. So there have been some celebrities who have run for Detroit City Council, and one most notably probably Gil Hill, who you may know as Inspector Todd from the Beverly Hills Cops movies, and who eventually became city council president.
But he was already on the city council when he was in the movies, though, right?
No, he was an inspector with the Detroit Police Department. Yeah, he was a cop.
But he was already in government, whatever. And then Martha Reeves as well. Martha Reeves.
Oh, that's a perfect one. Yeah.
Oh, you know what? Nailed it. Now she did win.
Yeah,
but,
she. I remember when we were still living in Detroit. My girlfriend is now my wife, Melissa. we would go and eat at the Click restaurant down on Jefferson. And like we couldn't, it was so amazing. We go there and Martha Reeves would just be sitting there eating. She would eat there fairly regularly. And we couldn't convey to people, like if we told someone, yeah, we live in Detroit and we go and eat at this Greasy Spoon Diner, and not only is Martha Reeves there constantly, but she's also on the city council, and it's no one pays it any mind. It wasn't even like you wouldn't even look twice if you were walking in there.
And she's also at the casino a lot. She spent a lot of time at the casino.
Not performing.
No, playing.
She did not spend a lot of time, as a ML Elric exclusive investigation revealed, paying her taxes.
That's right.
She also, I think, famously at the city council table.
Is this the Tiger Stadium one?
No, it might be. It was. They were asked to approve something, and she said, "Well, shouldn't we get some of whatever we approve? Like if we're going to approve this, it's like, well, we'll get some tickets to that, right? Or if if we're going to approve a recreation center, shouldn't we get a treadmill or something?" It was just one of those things where you're listening to it and saying
the quiet part out loud.
Yeah, it's like I know you're not really prepared for this job, but I was hoping it wouldn't be so incredibly obvious. But
old Tiger Stadium came up for some reason at a city council meeting in the demolition of it. And she goes, are they going to demo it? When is that going to start? And everyone looked at her and said, it's already started. They're like halfway done with it. She was just that clueless that, one of the most iconic buildings of the city was already being torn down.
Yeah, she was fairly benign, I think, on city council. But one time I was waiting in the city council parking lot for what my friend Steve Wilson would call an unscheduled accountability session with somebody on city council or some city official. And there's a row along Jefferson where all the city council members park their city cars. And there's a fence there now. I don't want to say it's because of me. It might be because Clyde Cleveland one time had some sort of spasm and drove all the way across Jefferson, like 6 lanes, and almost ran into the old Mariners church. And his staff said, well, he had a seizure. And then I know this story's going in a bunch of directions, but his staff ran out there to the car, not necessarily to see if the councilman was okay, but to get his gun out from under the seat because they knew he traveled with a piece, which he later beat his wife with and got a non-custodial sentence. So there's Detroit City Council for you. Anyways, I wasn't there for that story. Yeah. So I'm waiting for somebody to come out, and I see this well-dressed, nice-looking young guy come out and go to one of the city council cars, and he opens the trunk, and he pulls out what had to be like a 6-foot-long ostrich feather. And then I see Martha Reeves come out with a well-dressed older gentleman, and as she's coming into the parking lot walking towards this car, the young guy is brushing all the dust off the car with this 6-foot-long feather so that when she steps into the vehicle, she won't have any soot or any sort of detritus touch her personage. So, so there's your tax dollars at work.
Wow.
There you go.
Yeah. Now, with opening day coming up soon, the most famous Detroit City Council member before Gil Hill and Martha Reeves was probably Billy Rogel, who was a longtime Detroit Tiger. I think may have won the World Series with the Tigers back in 1945, who became a city council member and later had a city golf course named after him that I think was eventually bought by a big church that they tried to turn into something, and now it's a swamp. And so. Yeah. So there's your look back at Detroit City Council, brought back to you by nobody with any sense whatsoever.
I'm just listening to the history all day long. This is a treat for me.
Yeah, and you were waiting for Bill McGraw to deliver the goods. Well, let me tell you, there's a new old fart in town.
I'll still email Bill asking for the list. But
yeah, Free Press legend Bill McGraw, historian. Bill McGraw, I think, may have set a record for longest time as an underclassman at Wayne State University. It took him 35 years to graduate, and when he finally graduated with his bachelor's degree, his family made a bookmark for him that said the best 4 years of my life or something like that, and they had his freshman year picture and his current picture, and it looked like one of those things where somebody's grandpa's in class with them. It's like, no, that's the same guy. He just kind of paced himself.
I was told, who told me? I think ML Liebler told me that Lenny Sinclair dropped out of Wayne State in early 60s, probably around the time that they started the Detroit Artist Workshop. Lenny Sinclair famously was married to John Sinclair back during the heady hippie days. I think the other ML Liebler, he described it as she dropped out to join the revolution. And he probably longer than 35 years. I can't remember exactly when this happened, but she did finally get her degree. I think it was maybe 40 years later.
Jeez.
I think she was possibly in Monteith College at that point, which doesn't exist anymore. And the actual degree that she got is something that hasn't been offered in 40 years. Like I think they used some of her professional work as a independent study kind of thing.
Yeah, she got a degree in futurism. It's like someday we're going to have cars that run on diesel fuel and batteries, and we'll actually have another streetcar that doesn't go anywhere, going right down Woodward Avenue, and you're all going to have to pay for it. It's like, wow. Yeah, that was by the time she took a degree in futurism. By the time she graduated, it was a history degree. But the only thing that would really suck about that is, I mean, because you'd get, discounts in the cafeteria and at the gym and everything with your student card. But the only thing that would really suck about that is thinking about what your tuition was the first year and in the 40th year. And when I look at what I paid to go to school and what my girls are being charged to go to school, I'm like, I'm not sure the education is 100% better, but the tuition certainly is 100% higher. But,
yes.
Oh, man. So what's going on in the music world? You when we first were talking, you told us about a guy named Ted Lucas, who some folks think is a show on Netflix, but it turns out there's way more to it than that. No soccer involved, but he kicks ass instead of balls.
Ted Lasso is actually an Apple TV program, but I'll let it slide.
If they sponsored us, we'd get it right.
Yeah, Ted Lucas. Ted Lucas has been on my radar for maybe not quite 20 years, but around about that. He is a Detroit performer. Right? He's passed away. He passed away in the early 90s, but he was very, very visible in Detroit for a long time. He started out in a band called the Spike Drivers, and they put out a couple 45s on Reprise back in 1965 or 66. There's so much to say about Ted that I'm going to have to be on divergent paths. So
yeah, just try and be a little more direct than my Martha Reeves, Clyde Cleveland story. I've set a very low bar here, Ben.
Well, so Ted, Mumford graduate, son of Detroit, son of Greek immigrants. The Spike Drivers were kind of like the first hippie psychedelic band in Detroit. You might compare them to, the Jefferson Airplane in San Francisco, probably overlapping time periods or whatever. And they were on a major label. They were performing on Robin Seymour's Swingin' Time. You can go on YouTube and there's not a lot of footage that has survived from Swingin' Time, but performances of the Spike Drivers have. So they look stereotypically like hippies wearing the flamboyant, flowery outfits and the granny glasses and the Sir Lancelot haircuts, all that stuff. I love it. It's really, really great music. I appreciate it a lot. That band broke up. Ted, I think after the band broke up, he studied sitar under Ravi Shankar.
Wow, that's kind of a shift.
Yeah, the stereotypical, what do you do? Trying to find yourself in the 60s, so you go and learn sitar.
What year would that have been with Ravi's? Are we talking like the Beatles had already worked with them?
It's probably it's probably pretty close. I don't know. I don't remember exactly. Ravi Shankar had I think he had an outpost in Los Angeles where he taught sitar for a while. And if don't 100% quote me on this, but I believe that's where Ted studied underneath him.
So I had read that that he had been described as the exotic instrument expert. So did he learn from Ravi, or is that like he already knew how to play some of these?
He learned sitar from Ravi, but I think there's also he classically studied very, very much in Detroit under guitar teachers and other. He could play zither. I think anything stringed he knew how to play. But yeah, he was the go-to guy for Hitsville at Motown.
Yeah.
So say they're recording Martha Reeves and the Vandellas. Say they need a sitar on a Martha Reeves B-side. Ted was the guy that would get the call because he was probably the only person in town who knew how to play sitar.
And that's kind of the whole assembly line ideal of Motown. Are there a lot of Motown songs with sitar? Or, I mean, how many do you know approximately?
I couldn't name any of them.
Yeah.
But there's, they were, the studio was famously never, it was only closed during the riots.
Sure.
Stayed open 24 hours a day for 10 years or whatever it was. So someone's always got a crazy idea. Someone always thinks, we need something different. We need throw it all against the wall and see what sticks.
There was a lot of acid being done back then.
100%. Yeah. Psychedelic shack.
Yeah.
How do you think this shack got psychedelic? So Ted, I mean, there's like, I found in doing research on Ted, I found a clipping from one of the news. It was the Free Press, where how do you pronounce it? Grinnell's, the old department store or music store in town.
Oh yeah.
They'd have like a little ad. It says Friday from 6 to 7 p.m. performance in store by Ted Lucas playing the sitar. Like, it was considered so exotic and so interesting that this was like something people would just come and see him in store. Not like how we know record store in store performances like bands doing. This is kind of almost like background music that they would have it.
Like the piano at a Menards.
Yeah, exactly.
Except he was on a sitar. Which, by
Billy
the way,
Joel playing at a Bass Pro Shop, I think.
Yeah. Well, they I can understand that because they share a lot of political views. Billy's a big hunter. I think mainly he's hunting down that dude who stole Christy Brinkley away from him. But that was one of those things where there used to be record stores all over the place. Harmony House, Corvette, Grinnell. I think Grinnell sold more instruments than anything else.
Yeah. That sounds right. I'm probably mistaking the record store part, but yeah.
But that was pretty wild. And I don't know. I mean, I'm off track now, but does anybody go to Menards and hear that grand piano, that self-playing grand piano playing?
No one does, just you.
There's some stores where you go in there, I'm like, are they selling these pianos here? Why would what does this make me want to buy more nails? I don't understand it. It's we'll have to have the Menards on one of these days.
Ben, to me,
where is the Menards that you're going to? I'm out of the loop of their Metro Detroit footprint.
I think there's one on Telegraph, maybe out by
Farmington area.
Farmington, yeah. If you go upstairs, there's like a player grand piano that's just playing tunes. I'm like, okay.
Ben, I want to
near your house. Mike.
Yeah.
Why are you going out to Farmington?
I'm a man of the world, Ben, and I think that explains my city council defeat when I was canvassing on Telegraph Road, asking people to vote for me in Detroit.
Yeah. That's problematic.
Yeah, our polling said I would do very well there. Maybe that's why I went out there. But
100%.
You talk about Ted, and we were talking how this is the '60s and Motown and Ravi Shankar, but that's got to be 15 years before you were born. Like, how did you get into him and why?
Yeah, so I was born in '82. This is what I got excited about when I was 15 years old was vinyl records and record stores and digging for old weird things that were obscure, things that appealed to my eye. One of my daughters yesterday said, "Dad, why do you collect records? Why do you listen to records? Like, we have the house overflowing with them." I think it was more like, "Hey, can we get rid of these?"
Because they're cool.
Yeah, well, it's just like I said, I think, records help us understand who we are. I think records help us understand our dreams and what we want to accomplish. And it's a form of storytelling that I like more than I like film or than I like novels. This is what speaks to me is vinyl records. And I like, for this, in this instance too, the idea of some archaeological aspect to it, where there's a history to dig into. So Ted was, I say he was visible. TV performances. He was very, very frequently a guest on radio programs. He was always writing letters into Bob Talbert's column. Like all
Out of my
these
mind
things,
on Monday Morning with Ted Lucas and Bob Talbert.
Yes, and Bob would often. Ted was through the 70s was oftentimes doing residencies. So he'd be at the Pretzel Bowl Lounge for every Thursday through the month of August or whatever, and Talbert would mention it a bunch, and you'd see the ads, the print ads in the paper as well. So he's incredibly documented, of the span of his career. Around 1970, he got a request to submit solo recordings for consideration of release by Warner Brothers to the famous Mo Austin over at Warner. And Ted took it seriously and compiled these handful of recordings and submitted them. This is the album. This is essentially the album that Third Man, the label that I co-own and help run, has reissued. These wonderful, beautiful, brilliant songs, and got rejected. And there's no real telling why. It seems like listening to it from my perspective, from my ears, this album is such a no-brainer, classic, brilliant, beautiful, acoustic folk, wonderful melodies and harmonies. Ted has a really, really beautiful, sonorous voice. So the album got rejected. He kind of took it on the chin and took him a moment, but he self-released it around 1974, 75. And it went absolutely nowhere. It wasn't distributed. It wasn't like he went on tour. If you had a copy of this record, it was because Ted, put it into your hands.
Yeah, or you ran into him at Grinnell's.
Yeah,
where he was sweeping the other nights.
Yeah. So he, it's just kind of one of those travesties, injustices of like, from my opinion, he's so talented and prescient. Like we talk about, like kind of seeing like the music he recorded back then sounds fresh and new to me now, almost 50 years later. That it's unfortunate that he didn't get to experience any of the successes or the critical praise, let's say, of his efforts. But Ted is a really, really interesting intersection that for me, wearing kind of the historian hat at a record label, he's got three things that almost never happen, which is one, I think he's legitimately brilliant. Like he was a fantastic artist, singer, songwriter. He is also incredibly prolific. We've got probably upwards of 100 reels of recordings of Ted that span solo, that span Spike Drivers. He had another band called the Misty Wizards, another band called the Horny Toads, a couple other different recording exercises as well. So incredibly just documented himself incredibly well. And so what did I say? He said he's brilliant, documented himself well.
Sonorous
voice.
Of course. Where's Sean with that one? He'd be all over you. But so you're an aficionado. You have an appreciation for different aspects of music that maybe people might not have heard or appreciate. But you're also a businessman, and you are now releasing a record 50 years after it got rejected for a guy who's even lost more to the sands of time than he was in his time.
Yeah.
How does this make sense, and how well does it do? I mean, how do you get people to say, you should buy this album for more than Ben Blackwell thinks it's a kick-ass album?
Well, that's a usually my selling point is I think it's a kick-ass album. So you're putting me on the spot in that
It's
regard.
a pretty good business you got there, but how's it sustainable with that?
Well, it's
Because this isn't the only sort of you'd only find it at third man type artist or record you guys produce. I mean, you've been around for 10 or 15 years on Canfield there in the Cass Corridor.
About 10. I think we opened the store 10 years ago. 2015.
So it's something's working for you, but how do you make it work when you say, guess what? We're resurrecting Ted Lucas, if not literally, artistically.
Metaphorically, yeah. I think that we do have a bit of a reputation as I feel like it's too much patting myself on the back to say tastemakers. But I think we do have people's attention, and I have a particular focus on unheralded artists from Detroit. You know, this is fully in the Rodriguez Searching for Sugar Man realm. This is totally within the realm of the band Death, for the whole world to see, which, I had a small little discovery part in that band's reemergence. This is what I love. And so I have very limited bandwidth in terms of what I can focus on at work. And so I have to focus on things that I know, that I love, that I think I have the ability to translate. Like in this interview, I think I have the ability to get people to want to listen to this. And I truly feel once people listen to it, the music does the actual heavy lifting. If I can just direct people there, when you hear this, it's a beautiful Sunday morning record. And I'm also, I also have to think too of the next Ted Lucas record we're going to put out, the archival, omnibus, all the stuff that we're combing through right now of archived recordings. So it's bigger than just this one thing too, right? If it was this one thing, it'd be a little bit more cut and dry in regards to what my job is and what the expectations are. But we're involved in trying to really, really help establish this man's reputation as one of the great unheralded, not even unheralded, one of the greatest artists from Detroit. I got a recording the other day. Like, this is just interesting stuff. A transfer of one of the tapes that was in his archive, and it's a recording from it's audio from an episode of Swingin' Time with Robin Seymour. So it's like, you're swinging 60s teen dance party, right? And the audio was split into two parts, and one was an introduction and one was performance. And the introduction just said crying intro. I'm like, that sounds weird. And I click play on it, and it's Robin Seymour introducing Ted, and Ted cannot speak. He's overcome with emotion. He is in tears. You can hear him sobbing. And Robin's kind of like, hey, what's wrong? And Ted says, a dear friend of mine just overdosed on heroin today.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow, this is 69. This is kind of heavy stuff.
Yeah, this is going out over the network.
Yeah, exactly.
Where's the censors?
But so Robin Seymour does a pretty solid job of kind of navigating this bomb just dropped. And Ted said, this is a friend of mine named Nancy. And I'd like to perform a song. It's just an improvisational raga for Nancy. And so he plays this acoustic, Eastern tinged acoustic guitar raga. It's beautiful. And so I was messaging with Ted's sons who are live, and they live in Metro Detroit. I said, do you have any idea who Nancy is? I'm really, really intrigued here. And one of them replied like, oh yeah, Nancy was Nancy Gurley. She was married to Jim Gurley, who was the guitar player in Big Brother and the Holding Company.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Jim Gurley's originally from Detroit. He left Detroit in 1962, moved out to San Francisco, and started his way there. Ted was friends with Jim Gurley from before Big Brother. And then the brothers were talking about, like, yeah, there was, they're talking about Ted, I think, very much enjoyed marijuana. There's a song on the album called It's So Nice to Get Stoned.
there's a dead giveaway.
Yeah, that's right on the
It's
nose,
your first
right?
clue.
But he was very, very, it's funny. not being around at that time, and the dare programming kind of being beat into my skull of like drugs are drugs, of like so many digging back into old issues of like the Fifth Estate or the Warren Forest Sun, and seeing like how many of these hippies, let's call these countercultural guys, were so foresight. They had the foresight of saying like, hey man, we're about smoking pot. We're about maybe doing some LSD, but they just like had it on the nose, like how destructive heroin was. And like so many people you see pin the downfall of the movement or the downfall of the scene or whatever you want to call it is the introduction of hard drugs, right? Like everyone's great on LSD and pot, but once people start shooting up heroin, that becomes really, really problematic. And there's writings of Ted talking about this and describing this, of like how devastating it would be to their community. And this beautiful raga is a testament to it all. And it's like, now I got to figure out, how do we put this out? What is the context? What is the storytelling behind it? There's a really great local Detroit cat named Mike Dukevich, who is the what I'm saying is like the sliver of understanding of Ted, and Mike is like he's the worldwide expert, and he knows it all, and he wrote the liner notes, and he can so wonderfully expand and tell the story. We're working in conjunction with him on a lot of this, of just trying to put all the parts together to make it, to make a narrative of it all to understand.
You said that he has two sons that are still alive, and when you started this project, I think maybe it was about 10 years it took you to really get it going. Were they receptive to it, or were they like, who's this guy? What is he? Was he trying to look for a buck, or were they like, oh my gosh, look at all this stuff we have to give you? Or how helpful were they?
Yeah. So to full transparency, the record had been previously reissued by two wonderful gentlemen, Douglas McGowan and William Tyler, released this record back in 2010. They co-released it, but it was a very, very it's two people running a record label basically as a hobby. And so that helped get it largely on a lot of people's radars. I was aware of Ted Spike Drivers when they did the reissue. I wasn't aware of Ted's solo stuff.
Okay. So
it helped kind of make me more aware of it too 15 years ago. But it always felt like the vinyl didn't stay in print. It was, they were limited in the resources and the tools that they had to kind of make it available. And so I saw that and I said, well, we've got a big bullhorn here, and we can use that at Third Man to help spread the word. That was my interest in it. And so, yeah, the family, they got this rack full of tapes in the garage that they've been sitting on for almost 30 years since Ted had passed away, that they understood that there was some sort of, there was some value to be divined from it all.
Yeah, it's amazing to think that somebody's got that clearly not preserved if it's just sitting in a garage in Michigan, but hoping that someday somebody might knock on the door and say, "Hey, you got any Ted Lucas tape? Because we're kind of digging him." I mean, it's now obviously what's going to help launch this into the Billboard charts is this feature here on Soul of Detroit. It's most people who want to roll something out. It's us or Rogan, but I guess he's talking, I don't know, Elon Musk today or something. But
didn't return my calls. Didn't return the calls that I didn't make and would never speak to.
Yeah. No, I would have thought with the Tennessee area code he'd return them, but if you're calling from California, you can forget about it. But the People's Republic of Newsom. But I wonder, this record you released a while ago, how is it doing? And is there something where you say we'd like to roll the whole catalog out or do something with it, but it just it's we got other things we want to do too. Like you said, you have a limited bandwidth. How do you decide to pick somebody like Ted Lucas and say, this is the guy, I'm going to spend some time making the world appreciate someone who otherwise would be lost?
It's kind of just gut like I've spent enough time with it. When my second daughter was born, after the delivery, we're in the recovery room or whatever, and got an iPad or iPod, a bunch of songs you can play, whatever. I put on Ted Lucas. I've kept on coming back to it. So in the 10 years of trying to bring this in, and in my appreciation has not waned. And I go by that as an internal barometer of I still care about this. I mean, 10 years of trying to negotiate, of trying to get everyone on the same page, you have lots of opportunities to say, fuck it, and this isn't worth it. And I never really felt that. I still felt the love. I still felt that there was work to do that we can do. But in terms of the plan or the approach, it's definitely, that's kind of like, the secret sauce of how do you, we started by reissuing the one record of his that's out.
Which you can get at Third Man now.
At Third Man, you can get at fine vinyl retailers across the Metro Detroit area. They should all be in stock. People's Records down in Eastern Market has should have a whole wall full of them. Ripe Records in Grosse Pointe, stocked. Some of them may still have colored vinyl available if that is your thing. But beyond that, that's where you kind of get fun, because the reissue is pretty simple. You're taking the audio that already exists. You're taking the artwork that already exists. It's kind of just a drag and drop situation. Now we're digging into stuff that has not really seen the light of day. And that's where you really get to dig in and try to be creative and try to, like I said, you're trying to paint a narrative. You're trying to tell this person's story that they're not here to tell. But the tapes are here. The tapes can tell a lot of the story for us.
Now, Marc mentioned the kids. When you contacted them, were there any of them saying, well, it's about time we cash in on all this shit the old man left us? Or are they pretty much like, you know what, we just want to give him a second window?
I think, like all families, I think there's difficult relationships to navigate. And those relationships can change over the years from when you're a child versus, when your father's passed away. And so I think I had been had been relayed to me that maybe Ted wasn't the best of parents, that being a father, which, yeah, I'd imagine if you were a hippie and hanging out with John Sinclair in 1966, smoking weed. Yeah, I bet that has some sort of effect on your approach to parenting. But his sons, who are all, they're both older now, and there's kids of their own in there. I think they have a better understanding now that they're older of, I think Ted was probably just one of these people. He was solely made to make music, and to be in a world where that wasn't something that was available to him in terms of maybe having a career or even providing for his family. That's a cruel pill to have to swallow when you can't just go and be like, yeah, I'll go back to my lawyer job now. Like, that wasn't an option. I read the MC5 biography that just came out recently, and it's the greatest thing, the greatest line. They're talking about Fred Smith, guitar player in the MC5. They said he truly believed that if the MC5 ceased to be, in kind of, there's different moments where the band had these inflection points where they could have gone one direction, broken up, or, someone said Fred truly believed he could go grab his baseball mitt and just join the Tigers. And I'm like, yes, that's who you want to be the guitar player on stage. You want the guy who thinks he can do anything and loves baseball.
That sounds like another Third Man guy in Jack. I feel like he feels like he can go, which is weird to see him. He's on tour right now in Japan, and then he went to the baseball game, which was so great.
Yes.
I did want to ask you about that, because Third Man does a lot of cool stuff, but it's so tied with Jack. I'm personally, on a personal note, I'm super excited. He's the one artist I've always wanted to see. I've never been able to see him live, but I'm seeing him as he's coming to the Masonic the 12th and the 13th for the No Name album. And the release of the No Name album was flat out brilliant in how it was just given to customers, and of course the people that have the Third Man vault. And why I think it was brilliant was because, boy, did it cut through a lot of noise that day, where it's like nobody knew this was coming. Here it is. Go find it. how much involvement did you have with that release? I mean, how wildly successful was it? How did that just come to be?
Yeah, it was. I was incredibly involved.
Yeah, I figured.
Had Jack not said so himself, I wouldn't be claiming as much. But we had an early meeting. It was kind of a bunch of folks talking about ideas about this record and what the approach could be or should be and all this stuff. And I was sitting right here. And I just remember it just hit me about like what all these different ideas, overarching ideas, big ideas, the way to accomplish them. It was just very simple. I was like, we just need to give the record away. Mm-hmm. And that's like the small germination. You can say that, right? That's the easiest part, is saying that. And then everyone getting on the same page of figuring out, how do you do that?
I was going to say, it is how you do it, because I'm a huge Radiohead fan too, and they famously gave away In Rainbows. Like, if you want to pay for it, pay for it. If you don't. But to put it on vinyl,
well, no, you had to pay for it. It wasn't, you could pay as little as 1 cent.
That's
but
true.
You had to
That's
pay
true.
something.
There had to be something. But with the no name, I mean, you just slid it in there. As far as I know, the people that worked at Third Man didn't even really know what it was. You just gave them the directive, like, every customer gets this.
Told them to put it in people's back. But yeah, we had to do that. We had to coordinate that across 3 different stores. So we had the store in London, which is 7 hours ahead. Mm-hmm. I was up at 6 in the morning, 5 in the morning, seeing what getting the read on how the response was in London. And then also in Detroit and here in Nashville. And I remember a moment of hearing from Brian McCollum, Free Press music writer, who I love, Brian. And it was a day of, was it a Concert of Colors? There was some Concert of Colors event going on. And we famously did not tell press. We didn't, we just put it in the stores. And Brian texted me later in the day, maybe it was 6 in the afternoon or something at this point, where the story's kind of out, right? And he said something to me, is like, "Hey, next time Jack surprise releases a record, maybe give me a heads up that I should pick it up before the Concert of Colors."
Oh,
yeah. But I will say Brian was kind of the first in-depth written piece about it, and he so elegantly and eloquently nailed it and understood everything and got it from the drop. This is at a moment where people didn't even know the song titles, right?
Yeah, that's the other thing too, because I believe WDET, which that must have blown your mind, that I forget who the jock was, but he had just happened to
Brian Patrick Cooper.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, he just happened to be at Third Man and got it, because and immediately it's all on YouTube, but nobody knows what these tracks are. As a fan, it was really, really fun. It was incredibly overwhelming. It's like, I want to listen to all of it, but I don't know what to listen to first.
Well, it was a great moment too of you do something that you're kind of putting your chips on the table of how many people. There's definitely people in the camp of when I said we should just give this away. People are like, I don't like that idea.
Yeah. The accountants would be the first people at the table.
Yeah, but when you start breaking it down of here's thoughts and here's how we can do it, and do it this way and this way and accommodate this and all that stuff. So you plan and you plot. And you have the best of intentions, but then you don't really that Ryan Patrick Hooper thing. That was wow, we would have thought this would actually this part would actually happen. And then from there, so much of people knowing about what was happening was coming from Ryan's live stream, or people archiving his live stream and to be able to listen to the recordings. And then the mere fact that we told people share the digital files. Go ahead. That was, I think that was on our end. It was almost an afterthought of yeah, sure, whatever. And that helped so much. And people, different people who'd had the record, you hear some people oh, that person's turntable is slow, so don't listen to their rip. It's the tuning is off by a half step. You want to use this other one, and it's all happening it's the same day as the CrowdStrike shutdown.
Oh yeah, or a lot of sites. Yeah.
Yeah. So people were saying I'd heard third hand or whatever. A lot of people are like, yeah, I got sent home from work. I didn't have anything to do today because we didn't have internet at work. And so people are like, you had this opportunity to get a ton of people's attention. We're very, just like, I couldn't be happier with how that worked. And I think the team, it feels good that a crazy idea the team here can see through the craziness and make it happen.
It also helps that the album is really good, and a couple of the first tracks that went out there were like, kind of blew you away to where you wanted to hear more. But
yeah, that's the easiest part, right?
Yeah, Jack
like
does
people
good
want to
music.
hear this.
Yeah.
You wouldn't do it for a record you weren't super confident in. I just wish I had an idea that caused people to spend lots of money on records. That's why I'm working on now.
That's why he's touring.
Yeah. If you want to give away a record, I've got tons of great ideas.
Yeah. And if you still don't know who we're talking about, we're talking about Jack White. And how many albums did you end up giving away? I mean, you're charging for them now, right? I mean, if somebody wants
selling it now, but we did a different version. So that was rubber stamped. It was on white vinyl.
Yeah.
I don't even remember. It's not a lot. I don't think we publicly said how many we did, and we mailed some randomly to customers, to people that were in our fan club, the Vault. So some people just had it show up on their doorstep. And that was, suitably mind blowing as well. You wake up one day and there's a new Jack White record in your mailbox.
Yeah.
How freaking cool is that?
So did you give away hundreds, thousands?
Millions, Elric, millions.
And you're never going to be able to keep the Ted Lucas in stock after giving away 1 million Jack White albums. I mean, Ted Lucas has done pretty well so far. I mean, we only released it about a month ago. But people, there was definitely some pent up demand, and we're doing what we can to push and promote it and connect the dots to whatever the next release is, the archival, coming directly from the tapes that were in the garage. That was one of the first things after we signed the contract. I flew up to Detroit, and met with Ted's sons, and we signed the contract, and all the ink is still wet, and clearly it was occupying some valuable real estate in the garage. And like, when can you take the tapes? I'm like, yeah,
we're ready. Whenever you want them, we'll get them out of your hair. So
that's pretty cool. And it's nice when a passion project actually sustains itself and you can go to the next step and try and bring this to its full potential. Before we let you go, Ben, who else have you got your eye on where you're like, you know what, people deserve to hear this person's music?
I mean, anything on Third Man is something that I would say. We just announced today we signed a band called Die Spitz. Really, really great punk band from Austin. And so we've been talking with them for a while, and we've got plans to do more releases with them. That's one that's really exciting. But there's a whole team of folks here. Like, so I had very little direct involvement in that record, but I'm super excited about it. And that's the case. You got different people that talk to different artists and have their niche or their focus. If there's something that's archival in Detroit and, from decades past, that's usually what falls into my lap. That's what my expertise is. I'm not the best on new bands, touring bands that need to, have a radio plan, stuff like that. That's something I can do, but it's not my immediate wheelhouse, I would say.
Well, if you're interested, maybe we should talk about this after the show. I think I can get you some original recordings of the 1985 Grosse Pointe South Jazz Band.
No, he doesn't want that.
I have some.
100%. I would love to hear it.
Some pretty smoking alto sax solos.
It's always about you, isn't it?
No, those
albums will have to be given away. By the way, that won't be part of a business plan. That'll be your only option.
Well, we've got the Bully Pulpit here. I definitely am in search of. I think there's a 1969 St. Clair Montefialco, Grosse Pointe St. Clair Montefialco. Is it choir or boys choir? There's an LP that exists that is next to Invisible on your Google and your Discogs and online. I think someone from the school was selling CDR, or someone who was involved, maybe not through the school. Someone I think was selling CDRs on Facebook.
Okay,
maybe a decade ago. But this is like things like I have a pure passion of records, from the immediate neighborhood that I grew up in, right? Where the house address that's printed on the center label or on the back cover. So I went to Notre Dame High School in Harper Woods. There's a Notre Dame jazz band record, I think from 75. I've got a copy of that. But local church records, school records, those are the funnest thing for me. All day long.
I'm probably going to drive a little harder bargain than those Lucas boys. I'll just give you a heads up right there. I do have representation already, and we'll have your people talk to my people. But lots of crazy stuff going on at Third Man Records. If you've never been there, it is one of the great destinations. When people come to Detroit and they're like, where should I take somebody that wants to see something really cool about Detroit? It's a place where you could just hang out. I mean, you guys still have all kinds of cool swag. Does the recording booth still work?
The recording booth is 100% operational as of, we had to get a big overhaul to make that working. But yeah, you can go in and record your very own
45. Yeah. It's a super cool place. Well, Ben, I can't wait to see who you come out with next, especially if it's my recording. But
you played the saxophone in the Grosse Pointe South?
Let's just say I had an alto saxophone and sound came out of it. I don't know that anybody would call it music, but it did produce a noise.
I'm
a joyful noise.
Open ears over here.
Well, they'll be bleeding soon too. But apologies in advance. So Ben Blackwell, homeboy from East English Village, started his own record company, then decided to help out some kid named Jack Gillis get his own record company up and running. Co-founder, and are you CEO? Did you guys have fancy titles like that in Nashville? Or are you just like they just call you the Big Pard down there?
So there's another co-founder, co-owner named Ben Swank who I worked with, and earlier today he was having to help a band from overseas fill out forms to get into the country, and he's like, "What do you put for job title? What do you put for position?" And I was like. Co-founder and co-owner doesn't really seem to mean anything. He's like, I'll just put COO. Everyone knows that's important. I was like, yeah, let's do that. That'll get the band in the country through immigration.
Okay. Well, and then the tariffs kick in. We did mention off the top that you're the half of the drumming ensemble with the Dirt Bombs. The Dirt Bombs still playing around. When are you going to be in town next?
We've not played. I think usually it ends up being every 3 years, and I think July becomes 3 years. So I'm waiting for something to fall from the heavens as an offer for us to play.
Well, we do have an opening slot on Soul Night at the Caju Cafe on August 1st. If you want to pair that with the record release from that Grosse Pointe South Jazz Band, we could. All
right, we can talk budgeting. I'm happy to visit the old hood. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, when you say budgeting, that means you're supplying the finances, because I think our budget's pretty skint.
Hit up the Patreon, dude. You know how to make money.
What a great time to remind people, if you want to keep great guests like Ben coming on and telling us some cool stories, you can become a member of the Soulmates by joining us on Patreon for just $5 a month. You can get our bonus episode. You can watch the show. You can avoid those annoying insertion ads, and you can make sure that we keep coming back more often than Ted Lucas's next release, which is coming pretty soon. So it's not that bad, but we're here every week, folks.
Absolutely.
Hey, Ben, thanks very much. Tell Jack I'm sorry I haven't called him back. I've been kind of busy. But when he gets back from Japan, we'll go skating at Clark Park.
That sounds like a plan.
Okay, and we'll be right back with nothing whatsoever from Sean Windsor.
Thanks, Ben. All right, we're out.
Hey, thanks, Ben.
Yeah. Good stuff.
My pleasure. Hell yeah.
That was cool. And yeah, let us know next time you're in town. I would love to see you guys play again. It does seem to be like a sort of a grand occasion every few years, but it's always fun.
Absolutely.
Oh man, the geeks have inherited the earth.
Did I do that?
What a dork.
Does him wanting to play with us again mean that he's turning into a geek, or we're turning into cool guys?
This is one of those times when my mom would tell me, that's more than a geek. That's really serious. It's really, you shouldn't make light of that. And of course, she's right. But I got to tell you, I read this story about the hospital shooting in Troy.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
Where it turns out the one guy shot the other guy because he was mad that he didn't invite him to his dad's funeral. It's like, when I find out a coworker didn't invite me to a relative's funeral, I kind of feel lucky.
Yeah, nobody likes going to funerals, but
yeah, but I certainly, even if
Did you hear the secondary part of it?
No, that was crazy enough for me. You shoot somebody who didn't invite you to their dad's funeral. I mean, that's really not how you help with the grieving process.
He was so mad about it. He FaceTimed, I think this was according to Channel 7 or Channel 2, he FaceTimed the guy, a video of him peeing on the memorial pamphlet that they put out, because that's how mad he was. No, the guy's not all there.
No, presumably you're mad that you weren't invited to the decedent's funeral because you really liked the person or you liked the family or you wanted to pay your respects. I'm not sure how pissing on the program or shooting the son of the dead guy.
7 shots, by the way. I thought it was just 1 shot, and then it comes out that it's 7, which not a bad. I mean, if you're going to get shot, not a bad place to be if you're going to get shot. You're already at the hospital where you work.
Yeah.
Because that's what he did. There was a trail of blood going into the emergency room as the other guy left. It's a wild story. It's really messed up.
So this one won't end well, and I suspect that it will lead to a conviction. But in the meantime, if this helps people with the mourning, we can celebrate being named our Geek of the Week. Hey, it's not often that we're treated to nuggets of financial wisdom from none other than the great A.B. For instance, in this world, money can be divided into categories of be mine or not be mine. It can be greatly disappointing when someone had need for money that they thought be mine, only to find out that it not be mine. Call or text Luke Nowacki at 248-663-4748 to find out more about the super secret money category of Be Mine with Growth. Because when you call Luke, he'll make it all about you, sweetheart.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through
Mosaic Wealth.
Inc. Member FINRA-SIPC.
Mosaic Wealth.
Inc. is separately owned, and other entities and/or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent.
Mosaic Wealth.
Inc.
There's an all-night party in room 7609. And you can dance together all night if you've got the time.
A few moments ago, I said Sean had nothing to contribute to the show, but fear not, gentle listeners, and you kind viewers with the soulmates. He is contributing in his own way by helping Tom Izzo prepare the Spartans for the Sweet 16. I believe he's in East Lansing, where, as he often does, he provides coaching tips and insights on the game of basketball. Tips. Yeah, he's a very giving person. And Sean and Tom Izzo do go way back because they're both very old. But one of my favorite Tom Izzo press conference moments ever was when Sean asked him a question about, well, it looked like in the third quarter you may have to drop down the guy and you do a swing to the left and a 14 out cue, whatever it was. And
just what all the fans were thinking.
Right. And then Tom Izzo goes, oh, it sounds like somebody used to coach high school basketball. And that was just a sick burn. But hopefully there's more of those priceless moments coming up while Sean is.
I assume he'll be down in Atlanta for both games, right?
Yeah, you know what? Speaking as someone who is trying to get a raise out of the Free Press, I'm so grateful that our Michigan and our Michigan State beat writers are being sent to the same place, hopefully sharing a hotel room and perhaps collecting their own collection of green jackets while they're down there.
Yeah.
But what do you think the odds are that the Spartans and the Wolverines are going to have a third tilt this season?
Minimal. Because I don't think Michigan get by Auburn. But then again, I've been kind of down on them since the end of the season. You never know. I've always really liked Auburn this year, watching them play.
Well, number one, everybody.
I don't think State's got an issue at all.
They're unbeatable, but Michigan survives a buzzer beater in the first round against the Cinderella team.
It's really a buzzer beater.
Well, I mean, if they'd hit it, it would have beat the buzzer. But what I'm saying is, then they go on to the second round and they play a much higher seed. And they handle them pretty easily.
A team that they're better matched for, yeah.
Sure, but I mean, that's what happens. You know, the tournament is where you don't really know what you're going to get till it's there. And the Wolverines, I would not count them out. And I certainly think it's difficult to beat a team 3 times. I would love to beat them a 3rd time.
They are going up against one of the best players in the country, though, too. So
yeah, Auburn.
Johnny Broom,
That's
who's
a tall order.
6'10", too. I mean, the guy's a big guy who can shoot outside, so it's going to be up to Wolf and him.
Well, you guys got a 7-foot guy who can shoot from outside. Why are you
he hasn't been that hot
with a
lately.
degree from Yale.
Yeah, we'll see. I hope so.
That's pretty good. But so Sean will be back with us. And I want to tell you, next week we are expecting to have a very, very special guest. We think, and the news business makes liars out of people who make promises, but we expect Erica Erickson to be back with us.
Who's that?
Next week. She's a local newscaster. People seem to find her jocularity easy on the mind, and
she's so 2024.
She's never not doing something that makes people happy or informed. So that's pretty good. So we're looking forward to that. We ask you to give us a song suggestion and hopefully a little story for Room 7609, which is, of course, Sean's favorite part of the show. Mike writes in, years ago I was listening to Fresh Air on NPR. Didn't really pick Mike for a fresh air guy. And after the main subject, which I could not tell you what it was other than holding my attention until the end, they included an album review from a band called the Menzingers, and the album was called Hello, Exile, which caught my attention, and I've been a fan ever since. I think you guys might like this song called High School Friend. It brings me down memory lane. So here's the Menzingers from Exile with High School Friend.
high school friends, wondering where all the good times went. I was getting fucked up with a high school friend, wondering where all the good times went.
Boy, a lot of foul language in there, Mike. I'm not sure if they played that on NPR. They must have beeped some of that out.
It's a good hook.
Or maybe they didn't play the album. They just reviewed the album. Overwhelming sorrow shred. Don't let the overwhelming sorrow shred the hopes of tomorrow. Do you ever get that nostalgic where you miss something so much that you feel like there's not ever going to be any good stuff coming? I mean,
me personally.
I know you always want cash for a gift.
It's always on to the next thing.
Yeah, I do get wistful, and I tend to be someone, perhaps like the Lucas boys, who save things that I think may never be of value to anybody else, hoping that they will be. But I often find myself caught up in melancholy for things that never will be. But I always try and treat that by saying, oh, then there's a bunch of other shit that sucked.
There's so many cool things coming up, though.
That's true, too.
That's how I look at it.
The Bulldogs did lose in the semifinals last Sunday to the Yeti squad.
I was really concerned about that.
So now it's the Yeti squad versus the Icelanders, and we'll have a rematch with the Ginger Kids on Sunday night at 7:30. Troy Sports Center. Good seats are still available. In fact, I think last I checked, every single seat is still available for that consolation game. But it is sad when people die and things go and people move, and folks who you used to be really close with and used to talk to just have faded out of your life. I think that is a really, really poignant thing. But
I got really mad listening to a podcast the other day. And it was about they were talking to, it's kind of weird, but they were talking to autistic people who don't understand white lies, like small lies. And one of the ones that was driving the lady nuts was, she's like, why when you see someone, you're like, hey, I'll see you, let's get together. Because she's like, that's a lie. Why are you saying that? I'm like, but it's not a lie, because I feel like a lot of times the intention is there and they don't understand the intention. It's like, yeah, but I'm the worst at that. I'm the worst at staying in contact with people because it's always about the next thing.
Yeah, that's
pretty wild, though. The weird concept to think about. I think most of the time people's intentions are true.
Yeah. Well, there are intentions, but when people always tell me, like, we should get together, so I'm like, well, when are we going to do it?
Yeah.
Give me a date. And then if they don't, I'm like, I guess you didn't really want to, but that's fine.
I think they do want to. It's a lot harder than just picking a date. That was my point.
They didn't want to enough. But I think you're right, is when you're sitting here thinking about those things, there are so many things ahead and there's so many possibilities. And for people who...
Time's undefeated. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah. People who lapse into despair, I always think, just get to the next day. There'll be something ahead. There's always something out there. But God, Mike's getting us all deep, just over some friggin', what's these guys? The Howitzers?
But it is still fun getting drunk with a high school friend.
The Menzingers, men ziggers.
Yeah.
So, thanks, Mike. We love your stories and your music. And the better the story is, the less waxing poetic we'll do. So give us a good story. Mike kind of left the burden with us. Thanks, Mike. Maybe it was your overwhelming sorrow that shredded your hopes for tomorrow. But our hopes is that you'll send us a great suggestion and a story to mlsoulofdetroit@gmail.com. You can go to our website, which is mlsoulofdetroit.com, and check out any of our old episodes. You can also make a donation. You can hit the link for PayPal or Venmo to make a one-time donation that supports the show. Gives us enough cash so we can go out and pick up a Ted Lucas album. And we're going to need a little more cash because it sounds like it's the first of many releases coming from Third Man Records. We do have a couple new soulmates. It's been a while since we had some new initiates in the supporters group. John Wilson and Keith Cron, thank you for signing up. You have now unlocked a world of treasures and privileges that the rest of the world, if they knew how luxurious they were and how exclusive they were, we'd be rich men and we'd probably quit the podcast, which I guess would defeat the purpose. So maybe just $5 is good, But if you want to give more, We have different giving levels, and you can see what those are. Again, we're building up to, and I wasn't kidding, we are going to do a pedal pub ride this summer, we think, with Eric and some other folks. You can get involved with that as one of our soulmates, and then we have our big gig on August 1st at the Caju Cafe. To those of us who came out and saw us last week at the Caju Cafe for our St. Patrick's Day show, thank you very much. You may have heard me mangle a sentence, as I just did, and Hannah's setting me straight, as she often does. She says, I think the Neapolitan beer you were talking about was Saugatuck, not Saginaw Brewing Company. It is, of course, the Saugatuck Brewing Company, and I can't rule out that I didn't say it was a Napoleon beer from the Saginaw Brewing Company. Those come in short bottles, and they will be out very soon. I guess it'd probably be an Imperial Lager, wouldn't it?
Boy, you're loaded with
French history.
Puns. And
There you go. That's why people dial out after him, 7609. So, a little more feedback. Julie says, Hey, ML, I was watching Channel 4 Noon News today, and Rhonda Walker had a Reading Month piece featuring Dr. Brian Banks.
What?
You may know Brian Banks, who Drew calls America's guest, because he's always scamming somebody or doing something sketchy. He's the 8-time felon who resigned in disgrace from the State House after pleading guilty to yet another felony charge. As I've written in the Free Press, he is back as the principal of a charter school in Detroit, and apparently he still has some friends who don't know his background or don't care about his background.
No, they know. They don't care.
So Rhonda, wonderful person. I guess she got fooled. That's the best I can say. Julie says, thought you might be interested. And of course, we are. A little more feedback. Julie says, hey, I would love to enroll my kids for basketball lessons. Where are you located, please? I guess that's meant for Sean. I don't know. But we'll try and connect you. Now, Mark, I'm doing something we should never do, which is read an email from a listener for the first time without kind of giving it an eyeball. So get ready to bail me out if I get in trouble here. Dear ML, Emily writes, were you at State during this and writing for the State News? Super fascinating from a perspective of how news has evolved since the 1980s. If this happened these days, the kids could at least take to Facebook or Twitter X to immediately correct the false smears. Let's see. It says, random conversation this week on a typically somewhat toxic Spartan message board about a fraternity scandal in the 80s that I vaguely recall from my time on campus. What was interesting is my recollection was vastly different from the first-person account detailed on the message board. From my recollection, a fraternity in the 80s was kicked off campus and shut down for kicking out a gay black member. However, the first-person account on RCMB, I'm not sure what that is, detailed
Red Cedar Message Board.
Oh, Red Cedar Message Board.
That's okay. That's the big sports board.
Detailed a scandal in which the gay black officer was allegedly using his access to house keys to allegedly break into drunk, passed out brothers' locker rooms and attempt to sexually assault them in their beds. The brothers were ashamed to come forward until one finally abruptly moved out after being victimized, and then a handful of other brothers admitted they too were victims of the same perp, resulting in the perp being kicked out and reported to the university, and he was then expelled, ? But the damage was already done to the fraternity, and they disbanded, ? Shortly thereafter. Here's the thread. Maybe it would make a fascinating column or just podcast discussion. I have no recollection of this whatsoever, and I was at Michigan State from 1985 to 1990. That does not mean it didn't happen. And as I was reading this, and truly, this is the first time I've read this, I thought the scandal we were going to is the one that the State News had a role in. When I was early on in my career, I would write the occasional opinion column for the State News, and I wrote one basically, trashing the Greek system and saying that Greek week is back upon us like an unwanted boil. And it stirred up all this animosity between fraternity and sorority members and the State News. The State News is funded in part by a student tax that you could get back if you actively sought it. 400 Greeks came to the State News offices to get their tax back. Oh. I will tell you, the general manager was not pleased. And so there was a lot of, let's just say, static between the State News and the Greek system. Well,
God, because of one writer's opinion.
Yeah, well, he was pretty persuasive. It's a well-written column. Anyway, with this going on,
they didn't leave the Greek system. They just took their money away from the paper.
Yeah, no.
If you were that persuasive, they would have gone, yeah, this is dumb.
No, but there was talk of, fraternities having a bash, Mike Elric bash, and it was you'd go into classrooms and some people would write in chalk, Elric is God, and other people, Elric sucks. It really took the campus by storm. I mentioned this because there was this tension, and in the middle of this, one of the fraternities had a tradition where they would take any member who got pinned or engaged, tie him up to a tree or a fence post in front of the fraternity house, which was on Grand River Avenue, very prominent place, and they would dump on him what we were led to believe was anything that they had mopped up after a party. So people who vomited, people who crapped their pants, and they would put it in a 5-gallon pail underneath the stairs, let it ferment, and when this blessed occasion happened, they would douse the guy with this. Well, one of our photographers heard about this happening, went over there, got a photo of it, put it on the front page of the paper, and this fraternity decided to steal every copy of the newspaper they could. At that time, that was 38,000 daily editions. Of course, they were caught. The police got involved. It became a big scandal. That is the scandal that I remember. This other one sounds pretty salty too, but I have no recollection of it whatsoever. And that's pretty crazy.
Well, beware of message board rumors.
Well, you know what? It's people don't like the mainstream media and the traditional media, but at least before we publish something, we make some attempt to make sure
the editorial
process.
True.
Yeah. So anyways, well, Mark, I know you're under the weather and appreciate you soldiering through. Hopefully you'll kick this thing. I think
just need some sleep.
Little cod liver oil and vitamin A. You'll be right back on your feet. Next week, we expect Sean to be back with us in studio, unless the March Madness takes him everywhere.
Final Four team.
Yes. Well, because they go 16-8, right? So we're getting real close to the big dance. Michigan State will be in Toledo this weekend playing in the Frozen Four. I hope to be there Saturday, so if you see me there, say hey. And we're hoping Erica Erickson will make her triumphant return to the show next week. Thanks for your support, for listening, for watching, for becoming a soulmate, and for patronizing our supporters, Luke Nowacki at Pinnacle Wealth Strategy and the Caju Cafe. When you call them, let them know that you know about them because of the show. And until next week, we're going to bookend it with the same thing. Cyrus, take us out.
Can you dig that?
Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
Next week, the makers of Lifebuoy bring you a hard-hitting story entitled Death by Plan, the saga of
Sean Windsor's
fantastic revenge. Another exciting assignment in the newspaper career of fighting
ML Elric,
the big town. Don't miss it.